All we heard from the Democrats all day was no evidence. There's no evidence. Completely ignoring, Margot, the fact that Comer stated openly the purpose of yesterday was just to set the stage for why the inquiry was necessary. And there was not even an attempt by the Republicans to begin the fact presentation and finding process.
Right. It was crazy how they kept saying that there was no evidence and, oh, yeah, Donald Trump is bad. And, oh, yes, we're about to have a shutdown. So much evidence, not by fact witnesses, but documentary evidence from the bank records, from references to the emails and the text messages were presented. But the other thing they did is anything that was evidence, the Democrats wrote off as, oh, this was from Rudy Giuliani, so we can't trust it. This wasn't from Rudy Giuliani. This was from bank records. This was from the confidential human source that had nothing to do with Rudy Giuliani. So there's a lot of evidence. But as you also said, we are just starting the process. They were trying to lay this out and say, this is why we need the inquiry, because we have so much evidence of the corruption and quite a bit of circumstantial evidence tying President Joe Biden to the corruption, whether it's him benefiting or changing policy, that we need to have more. The Democrats' response is, oh, there's no evidence, this should be shut down.
Turley said, I'm trying to find it, but he said it was one of the most sweeping examples of corruption that he's ever seen.
Yeah, I've been a critic of influence peddling by both Republicans and Democrats for 3 decades. I've been writing about this a long time. Influence peddling is the favorite form of corruption in Washington, D.C., and this city is awash with it. But have I seen anything of this size and complexity? No. It just as an observer, no.
One of the most devastating examples of corruption he's ever seen. And he said this is a town awash in corrupt influence peddling, down in D.C. But this is particularly bad. Now Comer's putting the number. We had the IRS whistleblowers on this program. They said they're putting it at over 17 million that Hunter took in as a result of all these corrupt connections. Then Comer had put it at over 20 million for the Biden family and their associates, pushing Joe Biden's name. This is the gift that they were giving. No other services besides were related to Joe Biden. And now today they revised it up to 24 million. So what kind of subpoenas is he now issuing? Like what should we expect in terms of new data as a result of the inquiry officially being underway?
Sure. So we saw hit either late last night or this morning, I'm losing track of the timing, more subpoenas for bank records. And that's going to be important because what we need to see is where this money went. We know it was going through all of these different corporations that were set up, but we don't know everywhere that it went. So we're going to see more subpoenas on that. I would hope that we're also going to see more information from the whistleblowers. So there was a big dump of documents earlier in the week that went through and detailed what they found as part of the investigation. But it's really important to remember that the investigation did not get into at all President Biden. They weren't allowed to ask those questions. They weren't allowed to look at those documents. They weren't allowed to get emails. Another thing the whistleblowers noted was when they did searches of the computer, they didn't use Joe Biden's aliases. So they weren't able to get any of that type of information. So I would expect also more subpoenas to go out for email accounts, text accounts that are coming again from third parties. So we're not looking at, oh, this was hacked material. This is coming from third party providers. And to look at those aliases, to look at those text messages, to see what Joe Biden was doing, what kind of communications he was having.
Now, it also came out yesterday that Hunter Biden, we think it was Hunter Biden, accepted a $260,000 payment, one $250,000, one $10,000 payment. Explain the timing and how these two payments, which were from the Chinese, were linked back to the address that Joe Biden lives in.
Right. So the timing of that was around, I believe, when they were seeking a recommendation letter for one of their daughters for either college or grad school. And at this time, Hunter Biden did not live with the big guy. any longer. So the fact that it was shown as going to his address, again, is more evidence connecting President Biden to this pay-to-play scandal. And we also have the kind of contradiction between, was this a loan or was this supposed to be an investment? One of the individuals testifying yesterday is a forensic accountant. And he said, look, if it was a loan, you're going to have documents to back it up. And there aren't any documents for that. So that, again, is just more evidence of Joe Biden's personal involvement in this.
And it happened because Joe Biden launched his 2020 White House bid. He announced it in April of 2019. These payments came in July and August 2019. Suddenly, $260,000 is being sent from these Chinese officials to the Joe Biden Delaware home, or at least that's the home listed as the beneficiary address for the payments. They're suggesting that's, Hunter didn't live there at the time, but that, on the other hand, it was the address Hunter used on the bank account that the money was going to. In any event, all of this stinks. And I feel like, Margot, beyond a doubt, we've proven that Hunter Biden and his family members, let's exclude Joe for right now, were influence peddling with Joe Biden's name. There just is no doubt about that. He did it. He offered no services and he got rich doing it. Many, many millions just for being a Biden and obviously promising access to Joe Biden. And why does access to Joe Biden mean anything? It's not so that you can say you know a famous person or someone who is the sitting vice president or was just it's because you want him to do something for you. That's why influence matters, because it gives you power to do something. But I've gotten confused, I confess, in watching just some of yesterday's testimonials, because if we know that the Bidens are corrupt, again, let's exclude Joe from this for just purposes of argument. And we know also, Turley said this too, you don't actually have to prove that Joe got a bribe. It's enough that Hunter was essentially bribed. It's enough that they were paying Hunter all this money to have access to the Biden name. Then why aren't we done? Why do we have to keep digging on whether Joe cashed checks or Joe got 10 to 50% of Hunter's money? Like, why? It's interesting and it's even worse, but why is it necessary?
Because he's a Democrat. It really comes down to that the Democrat Party is standing behind him. And I think it's in part because the entire impeachment of Trump with Ukraine was based on covering up for Joe Biden. So they are continuing to cover up and to present all of the evidence that connects Joe Biden to this as non-existent when it does exist. I think that Turley, though, is maybe being a little bit more nuanced on this and is saying, look, yes, we know that the money was given to Hunter, and that's enough to show that there's corruption. But to make it rise to the level of an impeachable offense, we need to give more of a connection to President Biden. I think that we are there. I think, Megyn, that we're not just talking about him selling access. We're talking about then Vice President, later candidate Biden giving access, whether it's him picking up the phone and saying, hi, gentlemen, I'm glad you're there. Oh, isn't it a monsoon here? And talking about weather. That is proving that he had access. So we already have that. And that's the part that to me is amazing, that the media is not looking at this as the huge scandal it is. We know Vice President Biden, candidate Biden, gave access to these people who are paying his son. What we might not know is, did he directly benefit? And did he change American policy? I'd argue neither of those matter, but we also have evidence of both of those.
A tree branch hit a power line in Ohio, 2003, and it shut down 21 power plants. Around 100 people died. We have a power grid that was designed in the 1800s. Even the White House sees it. They're saying 2/3 of the grid are at least 25 years old. So they recently announced billions of dollars to update it. And how long will that actually take? That is why having your own solar power may be more important than ever. With the Patriot Power Generator, you get a solar generator that does not install into your house because it's portable, but it's still powerful enough for your phones, your medical devices, even your refrigerator. And right now, you can go to the numeral 4patriots.com and use the code MK to get 10% off your first purchase on anything in the store, including this power generator, Patriot power generator. You're also going to get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, plus free shipping on orders over $97. And a portion of every sale is donated to charities that support our veterans and their families. Okay, so go to 4patriots.com. Use code MK to get 10% off. 4patriots.com. Use code MK to get yours today. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.